俩姐妹来派出所报案，称80岁的父亲一直在被继母强奸，而这立马引起了警察的兴趣。
His wife, Charmaine, she pumps him full of erectile dysfunction pills and makes him have sex every day, which is dangerous considering he's got a heart condition.
并且继母还不允许俩人见父亲。可警探从技术上分析，这不算强奸。不料小女儿是学法律的。
Sexual intercourse with a person who's incapable of consent because of mental disability or incapacitation. Our father is almost 80 and has dementia. He does not consent. He cannot consent.
警探顿时无言以对了。接着本森就询问起了原因，结果妹妹表示父亲会把财产平分给他的现任妻子和孩子。
Your stepmother wants the child so she can have an extra share.
So she's raping him.
无疑，这些药物和强迫性行为是在一步步摧残老头的生命。随后，警察就来到了老头家里调查，可眼前的景象却与指控大相径庭。父亲神采奕奕，言语间满是对小娇妻的依赖与宠溺，甚至主动炫耀了两人的亲密关系，坚称一切都是自己心甘情愿，还调侃这是男人的责任。但就在他滔滔不绝之际，竟突然陷入了呆滞，明显是老年痴呆的症状。可当警察继续追问时，继母竟急忙借口丈夫已经累了，对他们下了逐客令。结果双方矛盾的表现让警方内部产生了分歧，一边是女儿们声泪俱下的指控，一边是丈夫看似心甘情愿的证词。继母的嫌疑似乎变得模糊不清了。而就在整个案子陷入僵局之际，突然噩耗传来，老头因为心脏病发刚刚被送进了医院。结果这成为了案子的转折点。
The daughter said that he had a heart condition. If the wife knew and was secretly feeding him those pills?
Yeah, that's assault 3. Recklessly causing physical injury to another person, maybe even attempted murder. Am I right, counselor?
但检察官却表示，除非他女儿能提供继母明知父亲有心脏病并且加重他病情的证据，否则谁也拿继母没办法。因此，接下来就是寻找相关证据了。随后，警察来找了大姐，以求证这件事。结果，大姐表示继母当然知道，父亲曾把自己的心脏病写进文章并发表过，全世界都知道。
Let me be clear. Did you and your sister ever specifically discuss your father's heart condition with Charmaine?
Absolutely.
这下就更确凿了。同时，本森也来到了医院，想知道老头的心脏病是不是伟哥引起的。可医生却不知道，因为还没看到他完整的病历。
Why not?
I thought that's why you're here.
His wife arrived 20 minutes ago with a private ambulance and removed him from the hospital against medical advice. She pulled him off the EKG monitor and was in such a hurry, she took our IV pump with her.
而这种情况非常危险，老头可能有性命之忧，所以必须尽快追上继母。好在幸运的是，警察很快就找到了那辆救护车。不料司机却交代，当时继母想去机场出国，但我果断拒绝了，因为我不想摊上人命官司。于是继母半路就换了一辆出租车走了。没想到居然这么疯狂。随后在司机的指引下，警察立马又追到了机场，截住了继母和父亲。哪知女人竟狡辩是要去度假，而老头也附和小娇妻。可警察手里有法院探视令，继母不得阻拦女儿们探望父亲，于是以此为理由强行将他们拦了回来。对此继母当然不乐意了，然后就带着律师和法官对质，还反问凭什么扣留自己。不料女儿们接话父亲精神不正常，你却想将他偷偷带出国。而警察也补充了继母今天强行把老头带出医院的详情，并且有证据显示导致他突发心脏病的起因是因为继母给他服用了过量伟哥。听到这，法官也明白了过来，今天的争论在于继母是否虐待了父亲。随后他直接问起了当事人是否被虐待了。而这话让继母相当欣慰，不料警察当即提醒他有精神病，于是小妹决定向大家证明一下。
You know who I am, right, Dad?
Yes, I know who I am. You're my daughter.
看似一切都很正常，不料当问到我叫什么名字时，老头却卡壳了。见状，继母连忙借口是他累了，不料法官也看出了端倪，又郑重问了一遍，结果老头就胡言乱语起来。对此，律师赶紧辩解，是因为他刚得了心脏病。但大女儿立即反驳，那你们还带他出院？然而法官的眼睛是雪亮的，当即判定将父亲送去医院。女儿们仍有探视权，警察听了也相当高兴，但却把继母气坏了。他的一切计划都泡汤了。然而不幸的是，就在第二天，警察商议接下来怎么办时，医院突然传来噩耗，老头于今早去世了，死因是心脏病发。这下案子就变成谋杀案了，必须查明他的死是否与继母有关了，而他的尸体就至关重要了。不料此时继母正准备处理老头的遗体，幸亏警察及时赶到，才拦了下来，强行将尸体带了回去。接着法医对尸体进行了检查，证实死因确实是心脏病发。不过同时也发现继母从他体内带走了一些东西。
What?
There's semen in his urethra.
这可真是够炸裂的。
He had sex.
Final ejaculation shortly before or after he died.
His wife climbed into the hospital bed with him?
I don't believe he was in any shape to be that fortunate. If you care to observe, I could show you the intrarectal trauma.
Really? Rectal probe electroejaculation. Wow.
可男警探明显不懂。
It's a technique for grieving wives to procreate with their loved ones, even posthumously.
这下可完全明白了。随后，当看到尸检报告后，检察官当即断定这是性犯罪。接着，警察又补充
In the middle of the night after he died, his daughters had just left.
His wife called in a specialized company to extract his sperm.
They're used to emergency calls. Same outfit cuts heads off bodies for people who want to freeze them.
而听了这些后，检察官又改判是谋杀罪了，随后就以过失杀人罪起诉了继母。就这样，一场围绕遗产与真相的法庭博弈正式拉开序幕。首先，管家出庭作证，他经常看到继母把伟哥碾碎，偷偷放进果汁里给父亲喝。接着，医生也明确表示，继母的行为加速了老头的死亡。不料律师却狡辩，反正老头已经是快死了，所以不论是他上厕所、拿起汤勺，都是有可能死去的。对此，医生还真无法反驳。而眼见律师在偷换概念，检察官赶紧继续发问：相对于拿起汤勺和被拖出医院，哪个更危险？当然是后者了。这样继母的危害就更大了。最后，大姐指责继母在明知他们有探视权的情况下，还阻止他们探望，明显就是想修改遗嘱。而就在所有人都以为真相大白，继母必将受到法律制裁时，一个意外的证据却彻底扭转了局势。继母和女儿突然同时收到了一条视频，竟是早已去世的父亲。这一下子就把大家整得措手不及了。原来父亲3年前就录了一段视频，在他死后由律师发送了出来。
Now I want to talk to the people I love. My beautiful wife, Charmaine, who saved my life. And my daughters, whom I love despite the way they treated me. Their mothers turned them against Charmaine. They were rude to her. Rude to my wife in my own home.
显然这段视频对警方很不利，随后这成为了律师的重要证据。视频中父亲明确表示，自己之所以多年不与女儿们联系，并非继母的阻挠，而是他自己的决定，因为他不满大女儿曾改编他的作品，更怨恨女儿因过往的家庭矛盾对他心怀怨恨，而这让所有人都陷入了沉默。女儿们的指控究竟是出于对父亲的关心，还是夹杂着对遗产的觊觎与多年的怨恨？接着轮到了继母陈述，她解释了把父亲从医院带走的原因是老头不想死在管子和机器的包围中，至于偷偷给他吃伟哥，是不想让他发现自己的身体已经不行了，这样会有损他男人的尊严。一切的解释都是那么合情合理，可检察官却质问
：“Your husband's doctor testified that he might have recovered, but you knew he was dying.
I knew he didn't want to be in that hospital.
But you didn't remove him until after you'd learned that his daughters had won visitation rights.
Seeing them distressed him.
Right. And you knew he wanted to die in peace.
Yes.
So you peacefully yanked him out of his hospital bed with a headlock in his arm.
He didn't want to be there.
You lied about where you were taking him, put him in an ambulance, pulled him out of that ambulance in Midtown Manhattan, shoved him in a taxi.
He didn't need an ambulance.
And then you took him to Westchester to wait in an airplane hangar without oxygen medication or professional supervision.
He was happy. He wasn't suffering. He was with me.
Not until the fatal heart attack that occurred shortly thereafter.
Which could have happened at any time.
And that gave you the right to make it happen sooner?
继母虽然对答如流，可明显是在狡辩。为此，律师赶紧传唤了下一位证人。不料一听名字，检察官当时就急眼了，因为那人正是小妹，她怎么可以给继母作证？但是法官却批准了，并给了检察官1个小时的准备时间。大姐当场就懵了，怎么也不会想到小妹竟然背刺自己。可小妹却反驳，看了视频后才知道真相，而且继母不让探望也一直是你告诉我的，这全都是你的一面之词。大姐急忙喊冤，哪知小妹也急了，直言都是因为父亲不让你改编他的作品，所以你嫉恨父亲，父亲才不想见你的。而就在大姐极力辩解之时，继母和律师突然走了过来，又和大姐争论了起来，不过却被小妹打断了，因为父亲不希望看到他们这个样子。而鉴于清官难断家务事，检察官则抛出了认罪协商，只要继母认罪服刑1年就够了。可继母却提出了一个不得不判缓刑的原因，那就是她怀孕了，是不用坐牢的。对此，检察官也不得不接受这个事实，毕竟再计较下去可就没完没了了。而整个案件聚焦在了家庭关系与人性博弈上，最可怕的不是陌生人的伤害，而是亲人之间的算计与隔阂。最珍贵的不是金钱与遗产，而是人与人之间最纯粹的陪伴与理解。当欲望褪去，当恩怨消散，剩下的或许才是生命最本真的模样。